Lord, for the remainder of our time here this morning, may your Spirit reign in our hearts. May the Word come alive to us. And may you, O Jesus, be invited to be center stage in our hearts. We thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, before you're seated, find somebody around you, shake their hand, find like 4 or 5 people. Shake their hand and say, you look better than me this morning. The worst group of people in the world to try to recollect after you give them time to fellowship is a group of preachers. Without question. Morning, SUM. I thought that at this point in time I might give a shout out to my favorite cohort. So let's vote. All right, shall we? Everybody on a count of 3, shout the name of your cohort. 1, 2, 3. There you go. That's the name of my favorite cohort right there. But I do see my good friend Whitney down here in the front row. Whitney's the cohort advisor in Ormond Beach. When Whitney became the cohort advisor, she and I talked not long after that. She tried to make it sound like she knew what she was doing. I knew she didn't have a clue. But you know the thing about Whitney is everything I tell her to do, she says, all right, Dr. Coates, I'll do that. And then I tell her, Whitney, you're going to have this difficult conversation with this student. She says, okay, I can do that. Whitney is an immersion. You know, she maybe didn't know what she was doing last September, but she learns really quickly. Whitney, I love you. You're doing a great job. So proud of you. Hey, why don't you give a shout out to my cohort advisor? Because they're not sitting in the front row. That's the reason. She's right here. She's in front of me, and I love her. So that's great. Hey, take your scriptures, please, and turn to me to the book of 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians, what chapter? How about the whole book? Would you stand for the reading of the word? Just kidding. I mean, not about we're going to refer to the whole book, but about we're going to read the whole thing. So no, just kidding. We are going to look at a number of places in 1 Corinthians this morning. You can consider it expository in the sense that the whole text is the whole book. So those of you who think the only type of sermon is expository, there you go. That's for you. A couple of years ago, in fact, 4 or 5 years ago now, I was starting a class, a course, Systematic Theology 3. It's the first time that I had taught that course here at SUM. And as I was teaching that course, a couple guys in the chat box were discussing, so what is this course? I don't know what this course is. What do we talk about in this course? And they had a few ideas, and I refrained from jumping in. I just let them go. And one of them was joking with the other one from a cohort here in the New Orleans area, and the other one from a cohort that was in Florida and Miami. And one of them said, I think we're going to talk about swag. And the other one said, yeah, maybe a theology of swag. I thought, that's not a bad idea. Maybe we should do that at some point in time. And then it came to my attention from my homiletics class this past term that nobody talks about the word swag anymore. I've been hanging on to this sermon for 4 years, and the New York cohort got rid of it in about 30 seconds. So rather than talk about swag, I thought I'd talk about whatever we call cool these days. And maybe we talk about a theology of whatever word it is that we call cool. How many think you're cool? Oh, I'm not real sure I had to raise my hand here, Dr. Coates. This sounds like a setup question. I guess my reputation precedes me, huh? Always in the business of trying to set you up with a question. 1 Corinthians is the perfect place for us to go for some help with that. Hey, is my friend Melody out there? Melody, do you have a microphone? I don't see her. Over there. Melody, are you ready? You need my microphone? Come on up. All right, so Melody's got a few people who are going to help her. You're going to just bring them right up here. Right? All right, go ahead. Hold on the microphone.
I brought a few people to help me because, Dr. Coates, you were talking about swag, and
yeah, go ahead.
I thought we talked about this.
What? We talked
swag
about what,
is
Melody?
so last...
No. Swag's dead.
Swag is dead. Melody, where did you get these people?
Swag is not cool.
Melody, I was your mentor for your capstone in the master's program. I thought we were friends.
Which is why I thought you would trust me when I told you not to open your message using swag. It's not cool.
Well, what do you have?
Well, that's why I grabbed a few students from different cohorts to help you with replacement words. So every place that you're going to use swag this morning,
you're going to replace it.
Yes, for the sake of Ben, too. He's
but
probably cringing.
But you have Jordan, and I'm supposed to trust you and Jordan?
Jordan was in your homiletics class. I heard you were trying to use it there, too.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, here's your word.
Dab.
Dab.
Everyone got nervous, right?
What did I get myself into? I knew this was a problem when she said Jordan was going to help her.
Dr. Coates, it's lit.
Lit.
Lit. Okay.
Whoa, Melody, don't go by that one for a minute. Lit.
Lit is better than swag, trust me.
What does lit mean?
Like, whatever you thought swag meant, lit means it.
There's also slay, like my girl's outfit is slaying.
On fleek, like Dr. Coates, that blazer, man, is on fleek.
There is no way I'm using the word fleek this morning. All right, thanks, Melody. Give it up for Melody. Still 1 Corinthians, right? Go to chapter 8 for just a moment. 1 Corinthians, they had sent a letter to Paul asking him some questions. And in those questions, one of them was, hey, what about meat offered to idols? Should we really, can we eat that or not? We have had a disagreement. And so Paul starts there and he says, yeah, I know that idols are dead, and so meat offered to them shouldn't really matter. There's nothing really to it. Don't really worry about it. And then in verse number 3, he says it's not about dead or alive idols. They thought they were so cool. They thought they were so lit. They thought everything is what, Paul's going to side with us. He's going to say, of course you can eat meat offered to idols because they're dead. And Paul says, it's irrelevant. It's all about whether or not you love people. Verse number 3. You can look at it and read it there. He says, this has got nothing to do with any of those other things. This is a question about whether or not you actually love your brother and sister who are weaker and may sometimes struggle. And right away, he just takes it and throws it out. Chapter 5. They thought they were really cool in chapter 5. They said, hey, we got this guy here who's among us. And Paul writes them and said, I have heard it said among you, and I almost believe it, that you have somebody who is living the life of Jerry Springer. And then Paul goes on to say, not only is this not cool, the guy is doing something so perverted, he wouldn't even make it on the Jerry Springer show. Jerry. And Paul says, what do you guys think you're doing? That's not grace. That's absurdity. You're not being cool. There's nothing cool about what you are doing. Sometimes we get obsessed with being cool. Has anybody ever done anything really stupid in the name of cool? Well, hold on a minute. Let me just channel my inner chancellor for a moment. Don't be lying in church. About 7 hands go up. How many of you were at one point in time a 13-year-old boy? Keep your hands up for a moment. How many of you have done something stupid in the name of cool? It's the same group of people. You wouldn't believe how dumb. We were driving yesterday down to Bourbon Street, and this guy, and there's these guys right off to the side, and one of them had this idea. They looked like they were 14. One of them had this really great idea. He said, hey, let's throw our skateboards and see how far they go, shall we? So they're throwing skateboard. It's just stupid, because you got to go get the skateboard, and it doesn't prove that you're cool or that your skateboard is cool, right? So much stupidity. In fact, I heard this story. You northern people will love this one. I heard this story about a group of 13-year-old boys, 7th graders. Oh, God loves 7th graders. 7th graders, in the middle of a snowstorm, in the middle of a blizzard, they went outside on the playground for recess, took their jackets out, and stood there with the snow and the wind blasting them in the face to prove how cool they were. That wasn't really a good idea, was it, Benjamin? I'm not saying he was there. I wasn't out there. I just heard that there were a bunch of guys who did this. It was around the time that he was in 7th grade. You'll have to ask my son whether or not he did it. Cool. We do so many things thinking that we're cool. We go to the pulpit thinking that we're cool. We strut up. We button our button, top button. Then we smile real big. And then we like to talk about wonderful things that are going to happen in our lives. We like to talk about how if we do our part, God will do his part. He'll rain down his blessings. I wasn't going to do Joel Osteen, but you know. If you do your part, God will do his part. And he'll rain down his blessings on you. But to be cool, I'd have to untuck my shirt. I'd have to have dark rimmed glasses and flip-flops, right? Because that's the cool look. Maybe a faux hawk or so. This hair does not do a faux hawk. All of these things we do in ministry to think that we're cool. You'd think that you outgrow it, but you go around a bunch of ministers who are in their 40s and 50s, and they're out trying to out-cool each other. It usually starts with, so, how's the church doing? Oh, great. You know, you could substitute the word bad there and they wouldn't even notice. How's the church doing? Oh, it's doing terrible. Oh, good, brother. That's fantastic. How did you have last Sunday? If you said 17, they think you meant 1700. And then you got to ask yourselves a few more questions about that, right? What does Paul really have to say about being cool? Does Paul have anything at all more to say about it? Corinthians is the perfect place to go, because in Corinth they thought they were doing everything right. They were culturally relevant. They were super spiritual. They were exercising grace to its fullest. And Paul starts off by saying, for the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. And in one sentence, he tells you that you can think you're doing everything right, being really cool, but it could just all be foolishness. 1 Corinthians talks about division, from seeing who was more cool. Who was the coolest cohort? And he also addresses the fact that none of them were wise before they came to Christ. None of them had earthly wisdom before they came to Christ. It's not very many of you were wise. You were all foolish in the sight of the world, but God chose the foolish things so that he could confound the wise of the world, to show what kind of a trophy that he could put up on his own trophy case, to show the enemy and the world that he was more powerful than any of their wisdom and any of their coolness. He addresses the fact that none of them were wise, but the wisdom of God is more foolish, is foolishness to man. And the only way that we can really come to a good theology of it, or a good understanding of that, is to understand that all of our own coolness doesn't matter to God one way or the other. Dr. Coates, if I can't be cool, I don't have anything left. That's okay. If all you had was your own coolness, you didn't have much to begin with. If all you had was your own swag. Oh, no, wait. Melody said I'm supposed to use if all you had was your own lit. If that's all you had, you didn't have anything anyway. You couldn't take it to the streets and win someone to Jesus with it. You couldn't step into the pulpit and change a life with it. You couldn't start a church with it. You couldn't go out to the street and try to win a prostitute for Jesus with it. You couldn't do anything on your own. You couldn't stand up and lead people to the presence of God. You could stand up and sing, but you couldn't stand up and lead them to the presence of God with your own talent. You couldn't do any of that on your own. You always needed Jesus. You certainly couldn't go out onto Bourbon Street thinking that you're really cool, because if you did that, you'd come back feeling like a total idiot. You'd be talking about how such of a bad night it had been. Sometimes in the process, though, we kind of forget that. And we go out onto Bourbon Street thinking, okay, I really need God. And then we come back as though we were really cool and we were the ones who had done it. Telling our stories in some sort of humble brag that we usually like to end with, oh, it's all God. And the only way I know the difference is if God lets me see into your heart, because he knows who's taking credit. He knows that if you're taking credit, you're leaving him out of the picture. And I'd rather not do that. I'd rather not leave God out of the picture. In fact, I'd rather invite Jesus onto the stage of my life. 17 times in 1 Corinthians, it says the word Jesus or Christ in 1 Corinthians 1. 17 times. Not because that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything only if you're going to proof text yourself to something. But otherwise, you might just find that inviting Jesus onto the stage of your life is the right thing to do, is the perfect thing to do. That having him there sets the stage for everything else that will happen. The Christian life is all about Jesus taking center stage rather than you being there. And just as he entered into the world, so he must enter into your life. And if he has not yet entered into your life, this is the perfect opportunity right here this morning. Oh, come on, Lee, now. You didn't think I was going to get away without witnessing back to you, did you? If you have not yet done that, this morning is the perfect morning for you to do that. To say, Jesus, I've been going through life and I haven't invited you to come onto the center stage of my life. I haven't made you Lord of my life and Savior. Would you please come into my life? And you can do that before we are done here this morning. It's all about, often in our own lives, having control. But we must turn control over to Jesus and invite him into our lives. Because as soon as Jesus steps on the stage, love has life. There's a picture of love right there when you see him. Now suddenly you can come to life on the inside where before you were once dead. Now you can come back to life. You can have something inside that you didn't have before. Where before you had nothing but anxiety. Now you will have peace in your heart when you invite Jesus on the center stage of your life. We all know that when Jesus enters our center stage of our life, love is not far behind. Over 50 times in the New Testament, love is mentioned. But some 40 times in the New Testament, humility is mentioned and taught. I think there's probably something for us to learn there. It's the second most taught characteristic in the New Testament. It's something that we ought to really look at in our own lives, because the deepest root of the Christian heart is truly humility. There is no repentance without humility. You don't get saved without humility. Look to St. Augustine. He's become kind of the prototype of what it means to get saved. Augustine was praying one day and was overcome with his own sin and his own grief for his own sin, and began to weep and weep uncontrollably, such that they heard him in another building not far away. Dr. Coates, St. Augustine was a long time ago. I know, but it's kind of become the prototype. You know how I know? Someone raises their hand and two pastors are talking on staff, and one pastor says to the other, hey, I saw that this person raised their hand Sunday morning. Yeah, I know, they've been raising their hand lately. Oh, no, Pastor, it was real this time. She was crying. Right? We understand that a little bit of sorrow and repentance comes along with repentance. And a little bit of humility goes along with that. Dr. Coates, real men don't cry. No. Real men blubber like a baby in the arms of Jesus. For Christians, the crucifixion was not evidence of Jesus' humiliation, but proof that greatness can express itself in humility, which is the noble choice to lower yourself for the sake of others, according to John Dixon in his book, Humilitas. It's not about humiliation. Some of you have become confused because the enemy has told you that humility was all about your own humiliation, and you don't want anything to do with that because you remember humiliation. You've been humiliated, and the enemy has tried to take something from you with that humiliation. But God wants you to understand there's a bit of a difference. Humility is having some control, but willingly giving up that How long is he going to follow me? But willingly giving up that control in service to other people. Inviting Jesus center stage in your lives. Because when you invite Jesus center stage in your life, you will never forget the crucifixion. 1 Corinthians is all about talking about the crucifixion. Talks about it right away in chapter 1 and moves to chapter 2, because at the beginning of chapter 2 in 1 Corinthians, it says, I determined when I came to you that I would know nothing other than the cross of Jesus Christ. He wasn't saying that that's all he was going to preach, but what he was saying is, I determined that I would not come to you with an eloquent kind of speech. In Corinth, they were all into rhetorical competitions. And Paul said that when I came to you to preach the gospel, I did not want to use the communication method that would make me sound cool. But rather I wanted the power of the cross to have its place, so that you wouldn't come to Jesus because of my slick marketing, but you would come because of the power of the cross of Jesus Christ. And the only way that you get there in your own lives is if you terminate your own desires. You have to daily take up your cross and follow him. You have to daily terminate the desires that are running out of control in your life. You have to daily say, I willingly set aside these things for the sake of Jesus Christ. It's what it means to say, I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, but Christ lives inside of me on a daily basis. It's really at the cross that you find your freedom. It's at the cross that you continue to live for him. It's at the cross that you find all of your liberation. It's at the cross that you find what it means to be cool. It's at the cross, at the cross, at the cross. It is no other place that you find what it really means to be a child of God. It's no other place you find your identity but in the cross of Jesus Christ. It is only there that you discover anything about your own life. If your identity is built on anything other than the cross of Jesus Christ, you will never terminate your own desires. Daily, you must say, I willingly terminate my desires for the sake of Jesus. I willingly get rid of them. For since in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Jesus crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and folly to the Gentiles. As Paul sets up this idea for them, he wants to make sure that they understand the whole logic. And he moves through it from divisions in chapter 1, verses 10 through 17, to the wisdom of the cross in the next section, to the supremacy of the cross in the next section, to the way of the Spirit coming in the one after that in chapter 2, verses 6 through 16, to the maturity of living in Christ in chapter number 3. Terminating our own desires requires that we say no to some things. Boy, isn't that pleasant? We do this annually in roughly 30 seconds. The hotel will have that turned off. Comes usually because of the smoke machines. They are saying we should exit the building. Crystal? Hold on another second. Crystal's going to let us know. Never mind. Give me a J. Give me an E. Give me an S. Give me a U. Give me an S.
Tell me what's wrong. Oh, what does that spell? Jesus!
Give me that back, Whitney. What did Pastor Tommy say? Sometimes you just got to have a sense of humor. I told my wife this is one of the highest honors of my life to preach this particular service. Gets interrupted by a fire alarm. Isn't that wonderful? Be something I could tell those grandkids my son says he's not going to give me all about. By faith, I'm claiming them. Isn't it wonderful? Isn't Jesus good? 1 Corinthians tells us that the cross of Jesus Christ is where everything starts. And when you invite him into your life, it's the cross of Jesus Christ that determines everything about us. Anytime that you take the cross of Jesus Christ out of the message, you have something other than Christianity. It's at the cross that you truly discover the power of being cool. There isn't any. So my advice is just take it to the cross and see what survives. The cross is the only adequate foundation upon which to build your life. So take your coolness to the cross and just see whether or not it becomes an adequate foundation to mix in with the cross. That's all I'd ask you to do. Just go to Jesus and say, all that I've been trying to do, should I just stop doing it? Because so many things in my life do not stand up under the weight of the cross. They don't stand up under the weight of going to Jesus and looking at the cross and saying, Jesus, when I put myself there to die to my own desires, to terminate my own desires, what really happens? I wonder what happens to coolness when it goes to the cross. Does anything ever emerge? After you bury it for 3 days, what really comes out of the tomb? Is it your coolness or is it just Jesus? Because after you've been to the cross of Jesus Christ, you're supposed to have a resurrected identity. Does that resurrected identity fill in there? I sometimes get these kinds of questions that I'm not really supposed to ask. Because when I ask them, they lead to a bunch of things in my own life and maybe in your life that you don't really like what God's doing there. Because if you had anything other than Jesus, you probably had too much. That's why you need the resurrected life. You are in Christ and he is in you, according to 1 Corinthians 3. That is your identity. It's the center of your identity. Therefore, the resurrection must be the center of your identity. And once everything in your life dies at the cross, all that will be resurrected will be a new life in Jesus Christ. And everything else that you've tried to mix in will somehow fall by the wayside. It'll fall here and it'll fall there and things will start to fall. Some of you, that's what's been happening to you this week. It happened to some of you yesterday morning during our prayer time. A few things fell off your life. It's going to happen for a few more of you here this morning. A few more things are going to fall off your life. Saw some people in here praying late last night. Things were falling off their lives. God was saying, let's take this and let's just set this aside so you never have to return to it again. Let's take this and let's set it aside over here. You've been saying, I don't know why this is in my life. It's because you have to go to the cross and get a resurrected identity. You have to let the power of the resurrection reign supreme in your life. And when that happens, an enormous power surge comes in and you are brought to life all over again. The answer is very simple. A resurrection takes place inside of you. And when that happens, something extraordinary begins to happen in your life. Paul will later argue in chapter number 2 that the only way is through the Spirit who can come in and make radical changes inside of us. Mostly, Paul says that God chose despised things. Look at somebody next to you and say, you might have been despised, but you aren't anymore. You've been to the cross and you've been changed. You've been to the cross and you are now resurrected. You're no longer despised. He was despised and rejected on your behalf so that you did not have to be despised any longer. He was despised, rejected, smitten of men, it says in Isaiah, so that you could somehow come back to life. He was exposed so that you would not have to be exposed, according to Hebrews chapter number 10. So that all the past, even if it comes to light, won't make you feel like you're exposed in front of other people. You will be resurrected, and all you'll have to say is, I am a new creation. I'm a child of the King. And everything in my past is just that. It is past. And what is in front of me is an identity that's been resurrected by Jesus Christ. For some of you, you've been looking at the past way too long, focusing on the hurt, focusing on being a victim, focusing on all of the other stuff that's taken place in the past. Dr. Coates, I've heard your testimony. That's right. I was saved at age 4. My parents have been married since 1964. My dad was a pastor. My mom worked to help to support the family. My mom's dad was a pastor. My grandma Coates' dad was a pastor. The generation before that, there was a pastor. And in the one before that, and in the one before that. We can go back to 10 generations. I raised an 11th generation pastor in my house. But the only people who think that I don't know pain are people who don't think that sheep bite. There was a point in time in my life in which I thought I would never recover from the pain of being a pastor's kid. For just a moment, we often have people who come on this stage, like Dr. Scott Camp, who talk to those of you who have a life similar to his. I can't talk to those people the same way that he can. But I'm going to talk to a group of people for about 3 minutes that you may not have someone talk to you very much. I want to talk to those of you who are pastors' kids just for a moment. And I want to tell you this. There's lots of occupations in this world that affect the family. You are not alone. You should stop thinking that you are. And there are a lot of places in this world where pain comes to families. Stop feeling like you're alone. You're not. Dr. Coates, you have no idea what they said. Honey, a lady stood up on a Wednesday night Bible study, pointed at my dad and shouted, "You're a liar." I know what it's like. Lady sent me a letter and said, "You will do this." And when I said no, we landed in court. I know what it's like. But I cannot run from my name. And when I saw my friends from Wisconsin, Bishop Walter Harvey, he knew me because we had pastored close to each other. But he also knew me because of my dad's name. And I wear it proudly. It's not just my name. It's the name of Dallas. And it's not just his and mine. I give it without much spot and without much wrinkle to Benjamin. And he can wear it proudly too. Because the hurt and the pain that comes into a pastor and a pastor's kid's life does not have to define you. It does not have to change you for the worse. It doesn't have to make you rebellious. It can make you stronger. Before we leave this place, if I just talk to you, I want to pray with you before we leave. I want to put my arms around you and hug you. And maybe we'll even cry together as two pastors' kids who have endured a little bit and have a few marks. But what we won't do is wallow in our own pity and our own hurt. We'll stand proudly as a child of our Father and a child of the King. I love being a pastor's kid so much that when I wrote my doctoral dissertation, I dedicated it to the two most important ministers in my life, my dad and my father-in-law. Because both my wife and I are ministers' kids, and we say it proudly. We refuse to be defined by any of the bad things that might have gone along with that. Bad stuff happens in everyone's life. I'm not blaming ministry, and I'm not blaming God because of it. I refuse to do that and end up in hell because I just wanted to be rebellious. I may not understand it, but I'm not going to hell because of a mystery. I would choose to live in the resurrected life of Jesus Christ. All I really have is Jesus, and that's okay. That's all I really need. I may not understand the life that you lived. You don't understand the life that I lived. Can we all just live in Jesus Christ? I don't think I have to have walked in your shoes to know that I can come to the same cross that liberated you and be liberated. I don't have any special favors in heaven because of my family heritage. All I have is the cross of Jesus Christ and the resurrected life. I don't have anything else. You don't have anything else. That's it. That's it. We don't ask you upon admissions to SUM if you would tell us all about your heritage. We ask you to tell us about your new life in Jesus Christ. Because that's what really binds us together, that I'm a new creation in Jesus Christ. Look at somebody next to you and say, I'm a new creation. Tell them I'm a child of the King. I'm a child of the King. I'm not some princess. I'm a child of the King. I'm a child of the King. I've been resurrected by Jesus Christ. I was crucified with Him, and I am resurrected before Him. He has changed me. He has remade me. And He has done all of that so that I can come to Him and bow low before Him and worship. And I can stoop low to wash the feet of other people. Sometimes there are people who graduate from Bible college and say there was no one waiting to hand me a job. I mean, they don't really say that. They say, it was really tough. I didn't have anybody there to help me. Look, the streets of Calcutta are lined every day, but they are not lined with out-of-work ministers. There's no long line at the wash basin to wash the feet of the poor. It's not standing room only saying, I'll go to Oakland and work with Points of Light. There are plenty of places for you to help. There are plenty of lost people for you to minister to. There are plenty of pimps waiting for you to become the pastor to the pimps. There are plenty of places for you to go out and find a need and begin to meet that need. And the only reason why you can't find it is because you didn't look at the need. Serving other people is what it's all about. Paul says it in chapter number 3. After having talked about inviting Jesus on the stage of our life and coming to the crucifixion and the cross of Jesus Christ, the resurrection of Jesus Christ and the resurrected identity, Paul says all of that is so that you can humbly serve other people. So that you can serve other people with everything that you have. He says, I'm a servant. And he also says, I'm a steward. I have this good deposit inside of me where I am supposed to serve other people. Humility is not about feeling bad for yourself or sorry for yourself. It's about using the power that you are given to stoop low for other people and wash their feet. It's about service to other people. It's about being a servant in Jesus' hands. It's about being willing to do what He asks you to do. And I got to tell you, it sure was loud when I was shouting about your identity. We got kind of quiet when I said serve other people. The minister who is not a servant has somehow forgotten the power of the cross of Jesus Christ. And I have to tell you, I discovered in pastoral ministry that it is easy to do. You go about the business of writing a bunch of sermons every week. I preached a whole lot of times, a whole lot of different sermons every week. When you start doing that and you become the insurance person in his church of 120, and I was it. You were just about everything. If there was a leak, I had to figure out how we were going to fix it. Either the roof or the toilet. Anything that was going on, I had to kind of figure out what we were going to do. I had a secretary and board members who were great and willing to help, but I had to just be there. And it's easy in that kind of environment to forget I am serving people. It's easy to track your growth line, your budget, all of those other things and forget I am here to serve. I am here to wash feet. I'm here to make somebody else successful. I'm here to brag on them and help them. I'm here to try to turn them into a hero and a giant of the faith. Sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we're about the business of doing everything but that. I wondered when I was in Bible college, how does that happen? It happens because you stop dying daily. You stop being resurrected daily. And you stop being re-empowered by the Spirit every day. It knows no size of church, and it knows no difference in the fivefold ministry. It can happen to anyone, anywhere, when we simply forget that we are servants, not just of Jesus Christ, but we are there to serve people. Not to be their slave, not to do whatever they tell us to do, but to try to empower them, to give them what will allow them to become a resurrected child of the King also. I try to do that as a professor and ask the professors to do that along with me, because that's what a teacher ought to do. Give positive feedback, encourage your students on, hold a high standard, and then encourage them to get to the standard. Professors, by the way, an A ought to mean an A. They should all be hard. Stop whining on Facebook. As pastor, I was there to try to help the people around me come into new life in Jesus Christ. As an evangelist, you're there to look every Sunday into the eyes of people who are hurting and lost and tell them there's hope in Jesus Christ. And if the check they hand you at the end wasn't quite what you had agreed upon, smile politely and say a whole bunch of lives were changed in Jesus Christ. Serve those around you. It's what being a humble child of the King means. Because humility is at the heart of what it means to be a Christian. And servanthood is what it means to be a minister, serving those in empowered life. All the issues that are addressed in 1 Corinthians, and there are many, come down to this. Invite Jesus onto your life stage, terminate your desires, discipline the resurrected identity, and serve others in the empowered life, and do all of that so that you can bow low before Him in worship. And while you're there, you can serve other people while you're on your knees. That's what it comes down to. And for some of you this morning, you brought a whole bunch of other stuff with you, thinking that all of that stuff would really help you out on the street, and it doesn't. Because if all you have is you still don't have enough. If you don't have Jesus going out there with you, you still don't have enough. And if you're trying to mix a whole bunch of you in with the cross of Christ, you've missed the importance of the cross, and you still don't have enough. If you're trying to rely on your own coolness, you don't have enough of it. If you're trying to rely on your own power, you didn't work out enough. If you're trying to rely on your own wisdom, all you're going to have is a bunch of foolishness, because all you really have is the power of Jesus Christ. All you really have is Jesus Christ living inside of you. All you really have is His resurrected life and His identity. And that's okay, because that's really all you need. Would you close your eyes, please, with me? Jesus, you are all we need. Jesus, I want to come to the point where you are all that I have. I want to come to the point where I can say all I have is you, and that's all I really need. Jesus, would you walk amongst us as you have been? Would you tap my friends on the shoulder? Would you whisper into their ear and talk about some things they really need to get rid of? Would you all stand with me for a moment? You know, I just can't help but thinking that perhaps the Lord's been speaking to you about some things in your life that ought to disappear so that you could be resurrected by Jesus Christ in that area. Can't help but thinking that there's some things that you ought to let go so that you can be remade and reformed in His image. If that's you, I want you to make an altar wherever you are and kneel down before Him, bowing low before Him. Maybe you want to come up front to do that. That'd be a great idea if you'd like for me to pray with you. If you're a pastor's kid, a minister's kid, and you want somebody to pray with you, come on up when everybody else comes up. I know you don't want to be made the center of attention. That's all right. I didn't either. Just come on up. I'll make my way to you and we'll pray together. Make an altar wherever you are and say, Jesus, I want to give this to you. You want to come up here and pray, go right ahead and do that. You want to do it right where you are, kneel right where you are and say, Jesus, I give this to you. Give this part of my life to you. Give this part of my heart to you. I turn it over to you. Jesus, I don't want it anymore. Can I be resurrected? Can I be made new? Could you come and bring something resurrected in my identity? Right now, wherever you are, turn to Him and say, that's exactly what I want, Jesus. It's exactly what I want. It's exactly what I want. Jesus, touch my friends as they make their place an altar. Touch my friends as they turn to you. They turn to you, running to you, saying, I want you to be all that I have. I want you to be all that I need.
Give you permission, our hearts are yours. We want you. We want you.